So I'm here today with David Mwanaka, farmer and journalist. I'm really excited to have you here, David.
Oh, thank you very much, Beth.
You're owner of Mwanaka Fresh Farm Foods with 2 physical shops and an online shop for your produce. You're one of very few Black farmers in the UK. So really looking forward to hearing about your journey today. You from Zimbabwe. David, what was your relationship with the land in Zimbabwe? Were you farming there as well?
In Zimbabwe, I wasn't farming as such. I was a journalist, but then in my early years in Zimbabwe, I think when I was my teenage years, I used to help my brother growing potatoes in the eastern part of the country. So we actually used to drive a tractor, and we had a few, probably 100 or so acres of potatoes. But I never had any experience in growing maize. That's one thing I always wanted to grow, but I never had the option to grow maize until when I came over to the UK.
Yeah, and when you're in with your brother, he was in the east. Is that Mitari? Whereabouts was he?
Oh, it's a small part of the eastern. Well, it's a small town in the eastern part of the country. It's Nyanga. It's near Mutare.
Okay, great. And when you weren't with him, were you in a city or rural?
Oh, sorry, I didn't get you.
When you weren't with him, were you in a city?
All right, yeah. I was in Harare, and I grew up between Harare and another small town called Rusape, and also another small town called Spinge, and 1 year I was in Gweru. That's another town in Zimbabwe. So I was just a bit all over the country actually.
Right. And so you were working as a journalist in Zimbabwe?
I was working as a journalist in Harare, yeah.
And what brought you to the UK?
I just got fed up working as a journalist in Zimbabwe, to be honest with you. We're going through that period when it's not to say that it stopped, but it started a long time ago when journalists were being tortured by the regime. So, yeah, I just thought I've had enough working as a journalist in Zimbabwe. I needed to I came to the UK. I wasn't expecting to live in the country for that long. I thought if I don't really like it, I might move on to the USA or another country. But my brother was in the UK, so at least I had somewhere to start from. I probably learned a lesson when I came to the UK that you need somewhere where you could maybe friends or relatives. It's difficult to just move to, let's say, to the USA when you haven't got anyone you know there. So I eventually had to settle for the UK. So when we came over to the UK, there was neither that ground flour, maize meal, or maize on the cob. That's what actually prompted me to start farming. But it was a long journey. It's not like I found out that there was no maize in the UK, so if I straight away started farming maize, but it was extremely difficult because no one had done it in the country. It was not even known that there's a crop called white maize in the UK.
Yeah. So you're inspired by wanting that taste of home.
That's correct, yeah. And I think it's something that has led most people to start farming all over the world. Just imagine the whites who came over to Zimbabwe. When they came over there, they grew up in the UK, I suppose, eating maybe potatoes. They came over to the UK, to Zimbabwe, there were no potatoes. And they had to figure out, are we going to expect a shipment of potatoes from the UK to come over to us in Zimbabwe, or we have to start growing? What also prompted me to start growing maize, that there's always something in you about something that you grow up eating. And when it's not there, irrespective of how tasty that food was, you sort of crave it. And I suppose that's natural to all human beings. That's why we've got food from, let's say, the Americas, in the UK, and the food that was originally crops that were originally grown in the UK all over the world. I suppose that's when we human beings started migrating all over the world. We took the crops that we were growing in our countries over to the new world, and to me that was, I would say, my own contribution to even grown up eating white maize in Zimbabwe. And then I come over to the UK. It wasn't available, so I had to start growing the white maize in the UK.
It's amazing. I had the pleasure of visiting one of your farms, I think a couple of years ago now, as part of one of our Black History Month hikes. And we were all so excited to come and see this land that you work.
Oh,
so this
I
is
remember
us
you guys.
on our way to you.
Yeah.
We had it was about a 10-mile hike to get to you. It was beautiful, although raining, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I remember it was a horrible day. It was really wet.
Yeah.
But we did manage to make a fire and roast some maize. And
it was delicious. So yeah, here you are cooking for us. It was the most beautiful, sweet maize I've ever had. It was just delicious, and everyone, I think, was just so happy to taste your produce. It was really.
I think what you had there was white sweet corn, not white maize. I think I gave white maize to some people, probably the ones from Kenya, and most of you got white sweet corn.
Okay, yeah.
Probably looked the same to you, but there's a difference.
Yeah, we came away with big sacks of corn and maize. It's a good point, actually. Over here, when I grew up in Suffolk, and maize was grown for animals and a sweet corn for humans. Is it the same language difference in Zim?
Yes, it's the same language difference, but people in Zim don't eat a lot of sweet corn. They eat maize instead. It's only a few really who eat sweet corn, and the sweet corn that's in Zimbabwe is actually yellow sweet corn, not even white.
Okay.
So we usually eat white maize. That's for boiling and for roasting. Sweet corn here is for both, but it's not a lot of people who eat sweet corn actually.
Okay. Here, I love this shot of you showing us your farm. You can just see how big it is. It's I don't remember how many acres, but it's an enormous site.
Yeah, that's just one of the sites. That particular site is, I think 25 acres. That field is probably around 25 acres. Then we've got another one just behind those trees. It's another 20 acres, and then we've still got 3 more fields just along that field. There's a field down. Well, you can't see it from here, but all the fields are lined alongside the river. Sorry.
It was just so exciting to be in this huge farm and to know it was all being worked by you as a Black farmer. People were so inspired that there were Black people doing that kind of thing. And it's not just maize and sweet corn, is it? You had lots of other crops.
Yeah, we do have lots of other crops actually that we do grow. We do grow another crop called sweet sorghum. Is eaten. The plant itself is eaten actually. It's more like sugarcane.
Yeah.
We do grow. Last year we did manage to grow groundnuts. So we are going to grow groundnuts in this country commercially as well.
Oh, wow.
We do grow another crop called jelly lemon or kiwano fruit. It's in the family of a lemon, but sorry, not lemon, but melon. Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Lemon, yes, yeah. It's in the same family as melons, but it's got some spikes and it's a bit jelly. It's currently, I know in Europe it's grown in France and I think Portugal. It's also grown in the USA, but originally comes from Africa. That's actually where most melons actually originate from in Africa. But this one is unique in the sense that not much has been done to this variety of melon. It's just as it was. With the melon that you now buy in the shops, I think they have done a lot of crossbreeds, and there are so many varieties of melons. But that particular melon that we grow, that's the original melon. Is just in its original form as it is ever been.
What colour is its flesh inside?
Well, it's orange. It's actually green when it's before it ripens, and when it ripens, it's yellow orangish. And some people say it tastes more like a tangy banana, but it's got its own unique taste. In the early stages, when it's green, it tastes more like a cucumber, but later on, it tastes more like a fruit. That's why it is also called kiwano fruit. It's not a fruit, but it's a melon. But then it's got these 2 stages where the taste is completely different.
Great. Kiwana.
Kiwano.
Kiwano.
Yeah.
Great. I'll look out for that one. So you've obviously sort of introduced new crops over the years, and as you mentioned, it sort of took a while to start. This didn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
How have you found UK soils and climate for different crops? Has it been sort of a process of trial and error to find out what will work?
Yeah, both the soil and the climate, yes, they play a big part in whether you can actually grow some crops or not. And well, the other reason why farmers in the UK never actually attempted to grow white maize was that there was always the notion that you can't grow white maize in the UK. Reason being that white maize is more of a tropical crop, and it needs a lot of heat to mature. So the climate in the UK is not very conducive for the growth of white maize. You can actually grow yellow maize to some extent without much problems, but white maize needs more heat than yellow maize. So as a result, you can actually grow some varieties of, most varieties of yellow white maize won't mature in the UK. That's now the difference between let's say Africa or Southern America, or when you're growing something in the Southern Hemisphere where it's warm, and then you come to the UK and it's not as warm as most countries in the Southern Hemisphere. So we've got this problem of the crop not maturing.
Right. Did you have to experiment with different varieties to find one that would be resilient?
Yeah, the early stages were really experimenting to grow lots of varieties, and it was basically try and error, and you try. And unfortunately, one thing about farming is if you try something this year, it doesn't work, you can't straight away try something else. It's on a yearly basis. If something fails this year, you have to wait for next season. And if it fails, you have to wait for another season. So if you experimented growing something and it fails, then you know for sure you've got a year before you start another trial. So that's how long it can actually take you.
You have to have great patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And groundnuts, how have they done? I would have imagined that
Yeah,
we'd
well,
have
a bit of in the early stages of growing groundnuts, but well, we did figure out how to grow them in the country, how to grow them to maturity in the country, and and this is mainly groundnuts as fresh groundnuts, is raw, not dried but fresh. So we do sell fresh groundnuts in our shops. So basically, what it is we just want to grow them for our shops and also for the local market. The UK imports tons and tons of groundnuts, and the market is there, but just that the knowledge of growing them hasn't been available just as much as the knowledge of growing white maize wasn't. There was no one who had attempted to grow white maize in the country, so the assumption was just you can't do it.
Yeah, I think it's
actually I remember actually one thing that made me to start growing white maize was the fact that I called someone who was the president of the Maize Association in the UK, and I just wanted to find out if it was possible to grow white maize in the UK. And in the end, he just said, no, look here, you're just wasting my time and your time as well. It's not possible to grow white maize in the country. So he just hung up on me.
wow.
It was just a bit rude. So
Yeah.
I felt challenged. I felt, actually, the first thing that came into me was, no, it means I can't do it. I mean, this guy knows everything about growing maize, and he told me I'm wasting his time. So I can't do it. So I was hoping that it's possible to do it. But then after what he told me, I was just taken back to ground zero. But after a while, I thought, no, let me just prove this guy. Let me prove this guy wrong. And the only way to prove him wrong is try to do it. So one reason why I actually started growing maize, apart from the fact that I wanted to eat it, I wanted to taste white maize grown in the UK, was I wanted to prove this guy wrong. And unfortunately, I never managed to talk to the guy again. But he's one of the guys who made me to grow white maize.
It just seems really short-sighted to not recognise he might not know how to, but that you, with your knowledge from Zim, could make that work.
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, according to the books, you probably would have read the books that it's not possible to grow white maize in the UK because of the climate. The only problem there is the climate. that it's not warm enough. And then he would have made that assumption to say, well, it's not possible. And I know most people would, times we read books, and from the books, you have been told that you can't do A, B, C, D. By the times, that's not the end of the world. You can, at times, overcome some obstacles that you've been told that you can't do A, B, C, D, or maybe you can't do this because maybe you are black. You can't do this, maybe you come from a certain part of the country. You can't do this because maybe you haven't got what it takes to do whatever you are supposed to do.
So you're mentioning there sort of people saying that you can't do it because you're black, because you're from a certain part of the country. And I just wondered what the responses have been to you as a black African farmer in the UK. How have people responded to you tending the land?
Yeah, well, the response has been pretty good, actually. The fact that I did manage to do it, and I managed to do something that the local farmers have always, either they were not aware that there's a crop called white maize, or those who are aware just assumed you can't grow it. Then I managed to do it. Although it was after some years of trials. And so the response that I got from the African community was that they were actually thrilled by the fact that, well, I'm a black person and in the UK, and also that I'm a black person and I managed to grow something that even the whites couldn't grow. And so that was actually an encouragement to me to think, well, I can even grow more things than what I started growing. That's the reason why I actually started growing white sweet corn that I was selling to shops like stores like Sainsbury's and Harrods, because white sweet corn wasn't known in the UK either. So I'm the first farmer to introduce white sweet corn as well in the country.
Yeah.
So I wanted, I do get inspired by challenges when you got challenges and then try to overcome those challenges. It's good when you actually do manage to succeed, because well, like they say, the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. So you really get to be proud of yourself if you overcome a big challenge than if there was no challenge to overcome at all.
Absolutely. And what a great challenge to find environments and ways of bringing life to these seeds so that they flourish in different climates. It, to me, brings to mind George Washington Carver and sort of just seeing what works, seeing what can be done with that simple seed. You mentioned to me in the past about some responses that weren't so kind, thinking about people seeing you in the fields and assuming you must be up to no good.
Yes, I mean, to be honest with you, I've come to that point of getting used to that one. I mean, it happens literally every year. Actually, this past year, that is a few months ago, we were in a field and this gentleman just walks towards me. He comes and he challenges me and says, "What are you doing here? We've had a few houses broken into around here. So what is it that you're doing here?" And I asked him, well, between the two of us, he was trespassing because I was legal in that field, and he walked out from wherever he was to come and challenge me to say, "What are you doing here?" And well, that really irritated me. So I actually just told him to just walk away, which he did, but he was very angry. But
it's the audacity that he was angry with you and he's trespassing on your land.
Yeah, he was trespassing on my land, but he came challenging me to say, "What are you doing here?" But it never dawned in him that it's him who was actually trespassing, not me. And another incident a few years ago when someone just came, well, it's just a few meters from roasted the maize when you came a few years ago. This gentleman comes along and I stopped my truck there, and then I started walking into the field. And then he sees me walking up the field and he says, "Oh, you know what? The footpath is just a few meters away." So to him, that can't be my field. I'm walking to that field. I'm trespassing. I'm supposed to be walking up with a footpath, but for some reason I've missed the footpath. So he was trying to be helpful, but helpful in a way, in an ignorant way, because I was supposed to be in the field, but according to him, I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be walking up a footpath. But just imagine if I was a white person,
you didn't belong. Yeah.
If I was a white person, would you have said, "Can you go and walk in the footpath over there?" I mean, this is something that I get almost on a yearly. If I don't get such attitudes, then probably there's something wrong. And I've got incidents where I would greet someone who's just walking past, and they won't greet you back. They'll just walk past you as if you don't actually exist. And one year, I just thought of because there was this man who actually he was trespassing, and he walked past me, and I just said hello. I just wanted to greet him. He just went past me as if I didn't exist. I said hello for the second time, third time, and in the end, I just said hello. I didn't know you are deaf. And then this time around, he turned around and said, "Who told you I'm deaf?" And then he started swearing at me. And I told him, "I've been greeting you and you're trespassing and you are so rude." But he started swearing at me and then he walked away. And also cases where you've got someone shouting at you, "I'm calling the police on you because you're stealing." But the funny thing is the stealing bit always comes when you are picking the corn. When they see you working in the field, suppose I was weeding or doing something in the field, you never get that attitude that you are stealing and they'll call the police for you. This time around you are working. But then later on, if you are working and you're cropping, you're stealing.
Yeah.
So this happens almost every year. To me, it's just like I said, if it doesn't happen, then I have to question what's wrong.
But it's just so shocking that I can hear that it's just normal for you. It's like the rhythm of the harvest. You expect the racism to come as the fruits ripen. It's just so demoralizing.
Yeah, it's demoralizing, but you've got to some point to get used to the fact that you're in that part of the country where there are two issues. One is ignorance, two is racism. And so you've got those two groups. One group doesn't mean to harm you, but they're just ignorant. And then there's the second group that's they just don't want to see you there. And the second group is the dangerous one because that group can actually attack you because that's the group that doesn't want to see you, that doesn't want to see blacks or anyone who is not white in the countryside. It just enrages them to see a black person in the countryside. That's why even if you greet them, they just walk past you as if you don't exist. To them, they haven't seen a person. So to me, that's the dangerous one.
Yeah, and you're right. That's the right word to use. It's dangerous. The more we talk about our experiences of Black people in nature and the countryside, so the more pushback we get. I don't know if you're noticing that people dismiss it. They say it's ridiculous. The countryside's not racist. There's this real denial of the attitudes that we encounter and that they're hostile and can make you feel unsafe or at risk of being hurt.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, you just don't know what to expect if you were to meet someone in the countryside because you don't know which of those two groups they belong to. But at the same time, there are very nice people out there. People don't really care about you. So I'm by no means saying that you come across every white person in the rural areas is racist. That would be wrong. There are very good people there. I mean, actually, if half of them were racist, then it would be difficult for you as a black person to ever be there. But you do have the rotten apples out of maybe out of 100 people. If you've got 5 of those terrible ones, those 5 are good enough to tarnish the image of everyone in the countryside. So it's how to deal with that 5% that can be nasty, and maybe the other percentage that is also ignorant, and in their ignorance, it could be they are portrayed as racist when they are, after a while, when they've come to know who you are and what you're doing there, you become friends. But when they first see you, because they don't know you, they are not expecting to see a black person there. They're just like, no, you must be lost. So the first instinct is you are lost. Actually, that's the other thing again. I've heard that people just say, oh, first question they ask you is, are you lost? You say, I'm not lost. Yeah. And then they're thinking, if you're not lost, so why are you doing it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I've heard that many, many times. Are you lost? And no, I'm not lost. Then there's a bit of silence because they don't know what the next question is.
Yeah,
So
the only reason that you can have for being there is you're
exactly.
lost. Yeah. That many times too. It sounds tiring to have to put up with that kind of nonsense, even if you accept people might be curious, that there is a way of approaching and being friendly and respectful. Thanks for sharing that, David. I think it's important for people to hear that although it's wonderful to be in the countryside, it's a very positive thing that there are issues for some communities to reflect on and think about is how they're making people feel being in those spaces. Let's go back to the farm. I was wondering if you could take us through sort of the year in terms of the seasons. Sort of thinking now it's winter, it's sort of the last week of January. Is there stuff happening in the fields?
Well, the first week of January, this week in particular, is snow. There's snow out there, and all we are growing at the moment is snow. For us arable farmers, there isn't much to do in winter.
Yeah.
Except if you're growing crops like wheat and some of the traditional crops, they do grow in, they do, well, I would say they are not affected by frost. So they do grow them in autumn, and by spring, then they start springing. So there isn't much that goes on in the raw areas at this time of the year until when you get around spring. But if you're keeping animals, unfortunately, there is no Christmas for you. There's no New Year. There's no holiday.
No break.
Yeah, no break whatsoever. Yeah. So for us, it's a time to bit of prepare for the next season.
Mm-hmm. And so what does that mean for you in winter? How do you spend your time?
So in winter, we also have to think, how can we solve this problem that we had last year? And hopefully next year, we have a better year by improving on those aspects of our farming practice that we didn't address the previous year. So yeah, it's not that there isn't nothing to do. There is always a lot to do, but it's just that it's not in the fields.
So problem solving.
Yeah.
So what happens next? So in the spring, you're back again out in the fields. What's the next stage for you?
Yeah, well, spring you're back in the fields. You start growing the vegetables. Probably those are the first ones, and then later on, maybe around May, we start growing the maize. May, June, it's time to plant the maize. And then
when you're planting and laying the seeds, you're doing that with tractor or how are you planting?
Yeah, we got to use tractor because there's no chance that you can grow something like 100 acres or more. Using a hoe, you just got to use tractors. That's the way to do it.
And it's plural. I'm just getting a sense of how big your team is working to plant.
Oh, well, when you're using tractors, really, they actually say one farmer can actually farm probably up to 10,000 acres without the need of anyone helping them, as long as a good tractor and the machinery. So for us, when it comes to planting and much of the earlier part of the work that's needed in the field, you only need one person really, until when you start harvesting, when you start picking the corn or the maize. That time you need a lot of people. We can't use machines to pick maize because then, unfortunately, maize doesn't mature at the same time. So if you use a machine, it probably just would harvest everything, what's ready and what's not ready. It will pick, and then you end up with so much waste. So
before we get to the harvest, let's say, because I interrupted you, you're saying that in May you're planting the maize. Is that right?
Yeah, May, June, yeah, that's the time to plant the maize. It depends again. I mean, it's not actually even said that you plant the maize in May. It's down to the weather in the field that you're cultivating. Some fields are wet and cold, so that even by May they won't be ready. So you might have to wait until maybe beginning of June or somewhere around there. In the olden days, they used to have a saying that for farmers, if you want to know the right time to start planting, you remove your pens and then you sit on the ground. If it's not cold, then it's ready for planting. If it's cold, then leave it. So it's down to the temperature of the soils for you to start planting.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Do you use the moon or other traditional rhythms to plant?
No. It's well, two things is the time of the year and the temperatures of the soil.
Mm-hmm. So you're planting up until maybe about May or June, and then what's happening July, August?
Well, end of July, we start picking the maize. August, September, October, possibly up to November, we'll be picking the maize. So that's harvest. Our harvest starts from end of July to hopefully beginning of November.
How many people help you with the harvest?
Harvest time, we usually got more than 10 people. Picking, packing, and then we also got drivers, up to 4 or 5 drivers. Delivering the maize to all the cities around the UK. So we do have up to probably, including drivers, maybe 15 to 20 people working from and at the fields. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And as you mentioned, your food is being stocked in major supermarkets like Sainsbury's, Harrods, Selfridges. Where else can people get your produce?
Well, what we were selling in Harrods was actually sweet corn. And what actually happened was at some point we ran out of, we don't have enough land. Actually, our biggest dilemma is we don't have enough land. We're actually seriously looking for a farm. And what has happened is because at some point we didn't have enough land, so we were not consistent in our supplying of the white sweet corn to stores like Sainsbury's. And unfortunately, you simply can't do that with supermarkets. If you want to supply them, you need consistent. So we had to stop, and it was also at the time when we had the recession. So our white sweet corn was more of it was actually being sold at a premium price. So because of the recession, people were to resort to the yellow maize that they were used to eating. So at that point, we had to stop. So most of our produce that are sold in our shops, and we do deliveries, like I say, right across the UK. And also we've got an online delivery service where we do next day delivery to our customers right across the UK.
Mm-hmm. That's Mwanaka Fresh Farm Foods.
Yeah, MwanakaFreshFarmFoods.com.
Great, great. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us that we haven't got to yet, David?
Yeah, what I can say is as for us ethnic minorities, we should look beyond what maybe our parents have achieved or what our parents have done. I mean, I wasn't born in this country, and I came into this country, and I thought I could work as a journalist, but then I couldn't. For maybe I can't complain and say, why didn't I get the job at the BBC? I couldn't have got a job at the BBC, maybe because of my accent. But then there are things that we can do. It's not to say that you are born in a particular, or we are born maybe not in this country, in Asia, America, or Africa. Therefore, you come into the UK, you only got to do similar jobs, or you can't start a business. That's absolutely not the case. You can start a business anywhere. You can be innovative. You can actually be the one who brings up new ideas, because actually new ideas do come with people who are maybe not, who didn't grow up in that environment, or you're trying to solve a problem. If you didn't grow up, if you're not born in the UK and you come to the UK and you realize there's a problem because you're born outside this country, then maybe your part is to solve that problem. So in solving your problem, you actually end up solving the problem of many people. That's why maybe the inventors, they maybe wanted to invent something that would solve their own problem or solve a problem somewhere in the community. And they ended up selling their invention and they became millionaires or billionaires. So it's out of solving an existing problem that you discover that this problem actually you've solved not just a problem, but a problem of many people, or a problem that the whole world is suffering from and needs someone to come up with an idea to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. I love your ingenuity. It's really inspiring. And the point, as you made, is that you're helping the community as well as having your own business, but also introducing something new to the UK that wasn't here before, that people didn't think was possible.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much for your time, David. Really enjoyed hearing about what you're up to at the moment.
Thank you very much, Beth and Pauline. Thank you.